I never thought a piece of jewelry could tear my family apart. But here I am, lying in the guest room at 3 a.m., staring at a crack in the ceiling that looks curiously like a question mark, wondering how everything went so wrong. 6 months ago, my daughter Clara came out as transgender. She's 23, and I'll admit I didn't handle it perfectly at first. I fumbled with pronouns and asked too many questions, but I really did try. Mia, my wife, threw herself into support groups and saved resources on her phone like they were lifelines. We both wanted Clara to feel loved. Then, 3 weeks ago, she demanded Grandma's Victorian heirloom ring, a treasured piece that had been passed down to the eldest female descendant for 5 generations and was worth around $1.2 million. Clara's always been impulsive. Not the kind of impulse that's as simple as dyeing her hair purple on a whim, but the kind that can leave lasting scars. At 19, for instance, she maxed out 3 credit cards in a single month buying designer clothes and then begged us to bail her out. Last year, she even sued her college for emotional distress after failing a class she'd barely attended. Although she lost the case, she had already drained her trust fund on legal fees. When she announced her transition, I hoped it would mark a fresh start. Now, I'm not so sure. For Clara, the ring wasn't just a family heirloom. It was like definitive proof of who she was. She made it very clear that if I truly saw her as my daughter, I was supposed to give her what she considered rightfully hers. Her tone was razor sharp, leaving no room for debate. Meanwhile, Mia sat silently at the kitchen table, tears in her eyes, caught between her fear of losing Clara and unspoken doubts neither of us dared name. My hesitation only fueled her anger, and soon she accused me of transphobia. A week later, while cleaning the guest room, I found some emails on Clara's old laptop that she'd left behind. I was sorting through them for anything salvageable before recycling the laptop when I discovered messages to her cousin from over a year ago. In those emails, she joked about gaming the system to secure inheritance benefits. One line in particular made my stomach clench. She casually mentioned that Grandma's ring could set her up for life, punctuating her message with a laugh. My hands trembled as I read it. I didn't want to believe what it meant. Later, I gently confronted Clara about whether there was more to her transition than she had shared with us. She turned pale and then erupted in fury, accusing me of invading her privacy. The anger was so intense that she threw her coffee cup with such force that it shattered the saucer. In that heated moment, she made it clear that she wanted the ring immediately and even threatened to cut off all contact if I didn't comply. Mia pleaded with me to keep things as calm as possible, while my brother Greg, the executor of Mom's estate, warned that legally the ring needed to be transferred with proof of genuine good faith. However, that was supposed to work. For the past 2 weeks, Clara hasn't spoken to me. Mia spends long hours on the porch, chain-smoking menthols in a way she hadn't done since her postpartum days. Greg has been trying to organize a family meeting, but Clara flatly refuses to attend unless the ring is part of the discussion, which, in a way, is exactly what she wants. Then the legal letter arrived. Clara's lawyer, a slick fellow who even advertises on billboards along the highway, demanded that the ring be returned by the end of the month, threatening to sue for emotional distress if we didn't comply. Mia collapsed onto the couch and, barely above a whisper, asked if Clara was truly prepared to take us to court, her voice fragile as if made of broken glass. I ended up hiring a financial auditor without telling Mia. It turned out that Clara's new apartment lease costs twice what she earns at her part-time job at the bookstore. The auditor uncovered $50,000 in credit card debt, far more than the few $1,000s she had mentioned last year. To make matters more complicated, Greg found a clause in Mom's will stating that if the ring's recipient ever sold it, they would lose their entire share of the inheritance. One late night, on a guilty impulse, I checked Clara's Instagram and immediately recognized the background of her latest selfie, a luxury consignment shop downtown. Mia started therapy soon after. She kept blaming herself and muttered that she was failing as a mother while mechanically scrubbing dishes that didn't even need cleaning. Greg maintained that I was upholding Mom's wish for the ring to go to someone living authentically, but the legal vagueness of that phrase still haunted me. I kept wondering whether Clara was truly being authentic or if this was just another impulsive grab, wrapped in a truth I was too afraid to unravel. Yesterday, Clara called. She argued that if I truly loved her, I would trust her, her voice cracking in a way that was both rehearsed and raw. I almost gave in, but then I imagined Mom's ring with its delicate scrollwork and a sapphire the color of her eyes, a stark reminder of what was at risk, like something you'd find in a pawn shop window. The deadline is in 10 days. Mia now sleeps clutching Clara's childhood stuffed rabbit, a relic of better times, while I've memorized every detail of that odd crack in the guest room ceiling. And somewhere, hidden away in a safe, Mom's ring sits, burdened by every unspoken doubt. I don't know if I'm protecting my daughter or pushing her further away. All I know is that no matter what I choose, someone I love will end up hurt. The legal letter originally allowed 30 days, and it's been 20 now. Every morning, I check the porch, half expecting Clara to be there, half hoping that she won't be. Now for the first update. 3 weeks. That's how long it's been since I last posted. 3 weeks of legal threats, sleepless nights, and a gnawing guilt that follows me like a shadow. I kept reminding myself that I did the right thing, but right felt razor thin when my daughter's voice on the phone sounded like that of a stranger. The deadline came and went. Clara's lawyer, the same billboard guy with the too-white smile, filed the lawsuit the very next morning. My brother Greg countersued for defamation almost immediately, claiming that she was dragging our mother's name through the mud for a payday. Mediation was surreal. We spent hours in a bland beige room with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, while the mediator, whose soft tone reminded me of a caring therapist, pressed Clara about why the ring meant so much to her. According to her, it was all about legacy, yet she kept looking at her hands with her knuckles white around the phone, something I had never seen before. Not even back when she was 7 and had lied about breaking Mia's favorite vase. Mia discovered the receipt tucked under Clara's old bed, wedged between a dusty copy of The Great Gatsby and a nearly empty bottle of nail polish. There was also a pawn shop slip dated a week before she came out to us, supposedly for a fake Rolex. When I confronted her about it, she responded with a sharp, brittle laugh and insisted that it had been a joke gift for a friend's birthday, like something straight out of a heist film. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but the dates didn't add up, and neither did the look in her eyes. Greg's lawyer later subpoenaed her finances, and it turned out she had taken out a $20,000 loan the previous month from one of those online lenders whose mascot resembled a cartoon loan shark. The interest rate was criminal. Mia found the loan paperwork discarded in the trash, with redacted sections glaring like a bad omen. That very night, she began taking sleeping pills, even though she had never bothered with something as simple as Advil before all this. Once, around 2 a.m., she whispered her doubts about whether Clara was lying, and then broke down, crying into her pillow until daylight. I had no answer then, and I still don't. Soon after, Emily, who had been Clara's inseparable friend since middle school, the one who taught her how to ride a bike, showed up at our door looking pale and clutching a Starbucks cup as if it were a lifeline. She addressed me formally and explained that Clara had been planning everything ever since our mother passed away, insisting that Clara needed the money. When Emily mentioned Clara's biological father, the man who had skipped town after defrauding nearly half our neighborhood when Clara was merely 3, her voice began to crack. She kept insisting that Clara was nothing like him, even though her eyes told a different story. At Greg's suggestion, I froze Clara's trust fund, hoping it would force her to negotiate. In retaliation, Clara left a voicemail in a flat, rehearsed tone that made it sound as if every word had been pre-planned, accusing me of effectively killing my daughter. Mia listened to that message on loop for an hour, sitting on the floor until I finally deleted it. It was then that I discovered Mom's diary in the attic, buried under old Christmas decorations with a cracked spine. One entry from when I was 15 mentioned that Mom was worried Clara was mimicking her con artist father. She had fibbed to the teacher about the field trip money and even laughed when I caught her. I read that entry 3 times before I ended up throwing up in the sink. Lately, Mia had been Googling detransition stories, though she had no idea that I had seen the open tabs on her laptop, forum posts, medical articles, and even a Reddit thread titled, "Was it worth it?" She now cries in the shower so loudly that I can hear her through the door. Clara's lawsuit was eventually dismissed because of a lack of evidence, according to the judge. She didn't even flinch when the announcement was made. Instead, she texted me that she would go public with the abuse claims and urged me to prepare for the spotlight. Later, after Clara labeled Greg's wife as a transphobic enabler, Greg's wife blocked Mia on Facebook. Mia took it all in silently, as though she had expected nothing less. The mediator had suggested family therapy, but Clara flatly refused unless we surrendered the ring first, insisting on it in a manner that made it feel as if we were at war. Last week, we met for coffee on what she claimed was neutral ground. She wore a sleek black jacket that looked expensive, and when I inquired about it, she only shrugged and mentioned that it was a gift, without disclosing who it was from. Later, after Googling the brand, I found out that the jacket was valued at around $3,000. I couldn't help but think about the loan, the pawn shop visit, and the way her hands trembled as she stirred her latte. Yesterday, I received a direct message from a reporter who said they were working on a piece about trans rights and family estrangement and wanted to chat. I showed the message to Greg, and he advised me to ignore it. About an hour later, Mia's mom called with a strained voice, urging that we give Clara the ring, let her sell it, and simply let her go. I almost agreed. But then I thought about Mom's diary and the way she had underlined certain words in her will, as if they were sacred. One word in particular had been marked as if it were a prayer. Now I don't know what is real anymore. Not the ring, not the lawsuit, nor even the daughter who used to sneak into our bed during thunderstorms. Mia is asleep now with a pill bottle half empty on her nightstand, while I sit in Clara's room staring at a nail polish stain on the carpet from the days when she was 16 and so rebellious. The mediator was clearly mistaken. This wasn't about legacy. It was about a girl who had always been 2 steps ahead of everyone, even herself, and a father who didn't know how to love her without risking the chance of losing her. This morning, the reporter messaged once more, but I still haven't replied. Now for the second update. 2 months. That's how long it's been since I last posted. 2 months of watching my family fracturing into jagged pieces, each one clutching their version of the truth like it could cut the others. Clara's Instagram went private the day after I asked her about that designer jacket, and her bio now claimed she was surviving parental abuse. Mia was the first to see it. She didn't say a word, she just handed me her phone, her thumb hesitating above the screen as if she feared it might burn her. I wanted to explain, to defend myself, but what was there to say? The girl in those photos, posing in front of neon-lit clubs with a smirk, didn't seem like the daughter I had raised, although maybe she did, and I had just never looked closely enough. Mia's therapist had suggested a separation, not a divorce, but a kind of space, so she's been staying with her sister now. On the first night of being alone, I microwaved a frozen lasagna and ate it in Clara's old room, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to her ceiling. I kept waiting to feel something. Rage, grief, relief. But all I could think about was the way one of the stars was peeling at the corner. A week later, Greg called, saying his audit had traced Clara's $20 loan to a boyfriend with a record for drug charges, mostly. When I confronted her about it, she burst into laughter and insisted in a shaky tone that she didn't even know anyone like that, reminding me of the way she'd lie about finishing her homework. I hung up before she could say anything more. I eventually gave in the next day and handed her the ring. That same night, Mia came home with red, puffy eyes and hugged me so tightly I could feel her heartbeat through my shirt, the first time in months we had touched. Greg amended the paperwork soon after, pressing his pen so hard into the page that it nearly tore. He muttered that it was a mistake, yet he completed it anyway, maybe for me, maybe for Mom. Within 48 hours, Clara had sold the ring. The collector who bought it contacted Greg to verify its history as a formality, and his voice was even and flat, as though he had expected it. That's when we invoked Mom's clause, the one that voided her inheritance if the ring was sold. I mailed the paperwork via certified mail and tracked the envelope online as if it were a ticking bomb. Things exploded when Clara showed up screaming. She hurled a lamp, the ugly one Mia's mom had given us, from the hallway table, shattering it against the wall. She kept shouting that I had ruined her, her mascara streaking down her face. Shortly after, 2 young-looking police officers arrived and escorted her out while she spat out threats of lawsuits and discrimination. Mia watched from the stairs, wrapping her arms around herself like a straitjacket. Later, Mia told me she had seen Clara at the mall. Apparently, Clara was laughing as some man put his arm around her, and she looked strangely happy. I didn't even ask if being happy was still a good thing. The boyfriend called the next day with words slurred and sharp, demanding that I stop ruining her life and mentioning that the ring money had been invested in a startup that turned out to be a pyramid scheme. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Mia came across pregnancy tests in the bathroom trash. 2 of them, both negative. She didn't say a word, just left them on the kitchen counter like evidence. I tried calling Clara, but she sent me straight to voicemail. Then, tragedy struck when Greg's wife miscarried. Not long afterward, Clara tweeted a biting remark about karma. That night, Mia blocked her on every platform, Instagram, Facebook, even the Spotify family plan. I later found her sitting in the dark, her phone glowing with a confirmation screen, whispering that she just couldn't go on. Last week, I dreamed of Mom in her garden, dirt under her nails, smiling as she told me I had done right. I woke up sobbing in a gasp that was as ugly as it was honest, the kind of cry I hadn't allowed myself since the funeral. Now Clara is suing Greg for emotional damages, and he's using Mom's diary as evidence. A diary where she had worried that Clara was taking after her con artist father. I haven't even asked how he got it. Some truths are easier to swallow when left unstirred. Mia now wants to sell the house because it holds too many ghosts. I still can't bring myself to clear out Clara's room. Her old soccer trophies still sit on the shelf, gathering dust in the crevices of their plastic gold cups. Yesterday, a letter arrived announcing that Clara is engaged. The photo attached shows her holding up her hand with a cubic zirconia glinting under studio lights. She looks radiant, terrifyingly alive. Last night, Mia came back. She didn't mention the pregnancy tests or the letter. She just sat beside me on the couch, her knee brushing mine. We didn't need to talk because nothing more needed saying. I keep ignoring the reporter's calls by letting them go straight to voicemail. Now for the final update. 6 months. That's how long it's been since I last updated. 6 months of watching the dust settle in, ways that feel less like resolution and more like ash after a fire. Clara's lawsuit against Greg fell apart first. Her lawyer quit after reading Mom's diary, the one where she'd scribbled her fears about Clara mirroring her con artist father. Greg mentioned that the attorney looked queasy when he handed it over, as if he had accidentally touched something rotten. I didn't ask how he got the diary. Some questions carve holes you can't fill. Mia's taken up gardening. She spends hours kneeling in the dirt, pruning the roses she planted where Clara's bedroom used to be. Mia described it as quiet healing. I don't tell her I overheard her sobbing into the soil last week. Her gloves caked in mud. She's off the sleeping pills, at least. Small mercies. The museum called about Mom's jewelry. When I handed the curator the last piece, a brooch shaped like a sparrow, she teared up and remarked that this was how legacies should be kept. I didn't mention Clara. Didn't need to. The sparrow's wings were chipped, but its eyes still gleamed. Clara called me in September, her voice raw as if she had been screaming. She immediately conveyed that he had left her, with no greeting or warning. The boyfriend, the one with the drug record, had vanished along with what was left of the ring money. When I reminded her that she had chosen this path, the line went dead. I sat there for an hour, phone in hand, waiting for her to call back. She didn't. A week later, she arrived with mascara running down her cheeks and her knuckles white as she clutched a positive pregnancy test. She pleaded for help in a cracking voice. Mia answered the door without yelling or crying, simply staring at Clara's shaking hands before closing it softly, as if shutting a well-read book. Greg's wife had her baby, a girl they named Eleanor, after Mom. Clara had sent them a condolence card that bore an apology for the loss, scrawled in glitter pen. Greg's wife ended up burning the card in their fireplace, and Mia remarked that the ashes smelled like sugar. I ran into Leela, Clara's childhood friend, at the grocery store. She hugged me awkwardly by the cereal aisle and murmured that the transition was real, but the greed was not. I didn't ask what she meant. The way she clutched her toddler's hand told me enough. We're selling the house. Mia packed up Clara's room while I was at work. When I came home, her childhood drawings were stacked in a box by the door. Stick figures of our family, all holding hands under a lopsided sun. I buried them in the backyard that night, next to the rose bushes. No ceremony, just me, a shovel, and the sound of the neighbor's dog barking at shadows. Clara's Instagram vanished in October. There was no goodbye post or cryptic bio update, just an error message. Her phone number became disconnected. Sometimes I dial it anyway, just to hear the recorded message stating that the number was no longer in service. It sounds softer than her voice toward the end. Greg is setting up a trust for baby Ellie. The museum will give her the ring when she turns 18, but she can't touch the money until she's 30. Greg joked that trusts were like cages, though his smile never reached his eyes. I think he was still seeing Clara's face when he looked at the legal papers. Mia's roses bloomed last week, their crimson petals as thick as velvet. She mentioned that they were for forgiveness, though she wouldn't say who needed it. I don't ask. Every morning, I check the porch, first for Clara, then for process servers, now for, I don't know, habit maybe. The museum exhibit opened on Mom's birthday. Her photo is displayed beside the ring, her smile fixed in that half-mocking expression she always had. The plaque read Legacy of Love. I almost laughed. Mom hated platitudes. A postcard arrived yesterday with no return address, featuring a blurry sunset and a brief apology. The postmark was smudged, but the stamp indicated it was from Nevada. Mia found me staring at it in the kitchen. She didn't read it. Instead, she simply took my hand, her palm rough from gardening, and squeezed it once. We didn't talk. We didn't need to. The roses are still growing. So are we.